Welcome, everyone. You are here for another episode of Mind Power Meets Mystic. It's me. I'm Michelle Walters. I'm the Mind Power, the hypnotherapist in this equation, joined by my dear friend and podcast partner, Cinthia Varkevisser, who is an intuitive healer and our show Mystic. We are excited to bring you an episode today that is the theme of some upcoming workshops we're going to be giving. The name of our new workshop is called Drop a Fear, Make a Decision. And we will be offering this a couple of times, including one time in person on April 26th in San Francisco in the afternoon. That's a Saturday. So, Cinthia, let's have you start and tell our audience how you define a fear.
Okay. I define a fear. First of all, fear is an emotion, and all emotions are finite. That doesn't mean that they're, all small, but they aren't invincible. They aren't something that can cause you, cause a terminal illness. It is something that is finite. And things that are finite, the things that are emotional, are based in the past. So when you think about a fear, it's a fear that you have experienced before and it didn't get the anticipated outcome. Okay. And so now, because I'm a woo-woo person, this can also happen while you're in the womb, right? As well as from a past life. But we're not going to go there because that's not going to serve us. We can actually, no matter where this fear came from, this emotion that is greater than the actual thought of what it is, um, can be resolved today. Okay, so anytime that we have something come up that's fearful, it's something where we had an unanticipated or unexpected outcome. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, what I like to do is I like to think that a fear is a place where we're just unclear, and that the clarity is going to lead us to our very next stage in life. So, the very next stage in life is to make a decision. So, why don't you talk about decision making?
I think decision making is so vital, so important, and something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, I have struggled with decision making from time to time. One of the things that I think is too unclear is that a lot of times we think about making a decision as like, oh, yeah, I've decided I'm going to go to the store this afternoon. Well, in the way that I was taught to think about decisions, you haven't decided until you are actually, driving on your way there. There is some commitment of resources, whether that's money or time or um, signing a pact or contract. These are ways that people actually make decisions. A decision is incomplete until that resource allocation has taken place. And I think that's one thing that people tend to get a little bit confused about from time to time. I was very blessed at the early part of my career between undergrad and grad school. I worked for a company called Strategic Decisions Group, and we helped all kinds of other companies figure out how to make good decisions. There's a whole framework that I learned from that job called the Decision Quality Framework that I love to speak about and teach on because not only is it relevant if you're a big company trying to make a multi-million dollar investment, it's a good framework if you're trying to decide should you buy a plane ticket to go on vacation next month. It is a very helpful framework and it can work in all kinds of decision making. And it is what I'm going to be teaching about in this workshop. So, this workshop is going to be awesome. It's going to combine sort of the best of Cynthia's woo and the best of my logic to be this unparalleled experience in terms of dropping a fear and helping somebody to get ready to actually make that decision. So, Cynthia, I thought we might help our listeners and potential workshop attendees better understand what we're talking about by sharing some stories about clients we've worked with who were looking at making decisions. Would you like to share one of those stories now?
Oh, absolutely. Let's go practical. Let's go practical. There's always intuition involved. But I would like to go to a practical one because I think everybody can relate to this. Uh, what's really important to see is that in in a story, someone will have an objection, and that objection does not mean that that's where the fear is. However, it's really important to listen to the objection because it leads back to the fear, the name of the fear. So we could name it a whole bunch of things. Um, it could be I'm mad at the person who cut me off when really I have a fear of driving in traffic or in traffic jams, right? So that's what's really important. It doesn't matter what the fear is. What's important is that we listen to what the objection is, and when the objection comes up, we know that someone is ready to make some kind of movement on it, right? Okay, so here's my favorite one, very practical. Some of my favorite people, my favorite couple, they came to me and I know them through intuitive work. I know them through woo work. And they also know that I do real estate. And they said, you know what? I trust you. If I can trust you to talk about my emotions and all these truths, then I'm also wanting to trust you with the money that we have, worked so hard in saving to take our next step. And I was really excited, super honored. Based on some techniques that I had done, we got really clear on what is it that they both want, what were non-negotiables were for both of them, because they're such a lovely couple. They'd already worked out a lot of things, and they talked about what was really important to them. So we worked within the area, we worked within, the finances, and everything was clicking along. However, every time we got to this place of, hey, it's within your budget, it's all these things, then I could feel the hesitation come in. And you didn't need to be super intuitive. It was, you could see their face, their eyes got big. It was
Mhm.
right deer in headlights type of thing. And then all the objections came up. What came out of it was that they had made an investment before, and the investment didn't turn out so well, and it made them lose money and trust in certain things. And so what we had to do is we had to talk about that. We had to talk about how long ago it was, what's the amount of information that they had, what was going on at that time with real estate. And then um, this is a time, because of the money, right, because of the money fear, there are times when you need to talk to someone's wallet, and there are times to talk to someone's heart. And so intuitively, it was about talking to their heart and saying, these are all the great things that are going on. And once their heart opened up and they said, yeah, this is really good. And we talked about, no house is perfect, not even brand spanking new houses. And, all the things that were imperfect was fixable by this couple. And then we talked to the wallet, and the wallet said, take a risk. Come on, let's do this. And I did some strong negotiations so that they could even feel more comfortable that whatever pennies were saved in the negotiations could go towards their thing. Now, here's the best part. By the time we actually got to the end of it, and they started falling into love with their house, as soon as, the more they went into their thing, into their escrow transaction, they move in, house is sold, things are looking well, and a house in their community goes up for sale at a much higher price point than what they bought.
Oh, so they felt good.
They felt like they
They
got a
got
deal.
in. Yeah.
They got in. Not only did they got in, they got a deal. And it was absolutely right. They got in at the absolute right time, because then the market started going up again. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's that's my story
That's a
of
big story.
fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a story. I'm not sure my story is quite so big, but a gal I have known for years, I met her at work, had finished her career. She had done a lot of work really all over the country, but had finished up her working years in New Jersey, I think, or New York or Pennsylvania, somewhere in that part of the country. And she was looking at where she wanted to live, where she could afford to live, that kind of a thing. And she was in this quandary if she should relocate to Florida. And she had a number of friends in Florida, not a ton, but some. And of course, it's sunny down there and the weather is good, and her dollars were going to go pretty far at that time. And she was, really seriously considering this. But she wanted to talk to me because of all things, she had a friend from that North Atlantic area that had moved to Florida who drove her crazy. This friend of hers just drove her crazy all the time. And she was like, I don't know if I should move down there because my friend might drive me crazy. And so I was helpful to help her get in touch with really her heart and her powers and what things she could do, what things were in her control, what things were out of her control, and really sort of figure out how to frame this decision and frame what choices she was making and how was she going to negotiate some of these things, which in her case, it was interesting that in her case, her relocation, the primary issue was this move with this other person associated. And she ultimately worked with me and made the decision she was going to move to Florida. She moved to Florida. She did, in fact, encounter a number of problems with that woman in who already had lived in Florida, but managed to figure out how to set up her boundaries in such a way as to be able to, not be in close contact with her, but still have something of a connection. And she was very happy about having made her move to Florida. So that's one of my examples. Do you have another example you could share, Cynthia?
I do. And this is a fun story for me. Probably uncomfortable for the other person, but this is a fun story for me. So way back when I first started teaching, and you have to remember, I started doing intuitive work, back in 1992. And I had someone talk me into teaching starting 1993. This was one of the times where the teaching was growing, having a really good time, and decided to do a intentional vision boarding class. And one of the people there, everything that they put on their board, they actually at that time we weren't doing a board, we were doing a binder because we wanted
Oh,
to, right?
okay.
We wanted to uh, not compartmentalize things, but really focus on all the aspects in our life, right? Didn't matter what aspect. We might as well just made one whole binder with no tabs in it. It was all baby, 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 baby. This person hadn't had a boyfriend, which meant that, and they didn't have a boyfriend, but it was baby, 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 baby. Um, and we're just dying. We're dying because, there were a bunch of us and we'd known each other fairly well by this time. And we're like, all right, so set that intention, set that intention. Well, a little time goes by, not a whole lot, but we've already forgotten about our vision boarding because we were doing our day to day. And there's this old friend who started coming around and showed interest in her. And she's like, Sin, I'm really not into this person. And I said, come on, just have fun. You're not dating anybody. You know, you're not doing anything. And right now it wouldn't harm you to have more friends. And so they developed this friendship. And he was very I won't say he was pressing, but you could tell he was interested. And he kept saying he was interested. He kept saying he was interested. And so finally we sat down and she says, I'm really not so sure. And I said, hey, don't you remember you want a baby? And she says, yeah, and I said, well, what's the big deal? What is the big deal? Sex is fun. You like having sex. I'm sure he likes having sex too. And, there's a pretty good chance that there's a baby that comes out of it. And she's like, but what about the logistics of all that. I said, don't worry about the logistics. You have, all you care about is baby. And, you could tell them if you get pregnant that don't worry, you got it all worked out. Lo and behold, and it was so obvious that just, little friends, the distant friends would go, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, stop it. It's not like that. Um, and of course, it became like that. And she got pregnant. And we are all laughing, or not laughing, we were laughing joyfully, like, ooh, intention come true, right? That was 21, 22 years ago. That man is still with her by their side, and they are husband and wife.
Ah,
Yeah.
with a big grown baby.
With a big grown baby. Yeah. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have a story about somebody who I helped make a decision about changing her career. This was somebody who I worked with in digital marketing. She'd been on my team, and she was kind of getting tired of digital marketing. She'd been doing it a long time, kind of burning out, wasn't sure what she wanted to do. She's the breadwinner for her household, so, making a change in her career was made a big difference. She needed to move into something where she could make real money and make real money in, not a very long period of time. And so she came to me and she was like, I don't know, how do I figure this out? And so we talked about a bunch of things. We had plenty of time sort of on the discussion side, investigating what information she needed, how she was looking at the decision, how she was evaluating the pros and cons, what were her values, what was important to her. And we went through all of this, and we also did some work in hypnosis. And lo and behold, she decided to change her career from digital marketing to being a real estate agent. And she is now a real estate agent in California, and she's done very well. As Cynthia well knows, it's not the easiest career. It's not for everybody. It's quite competitive. It requires a lot of skill and discipline and people action and this kind of a thing. She has moved into this business and thrived, winning awards from her office and doing all kinds of things. And it makes me so happy to know that I had this little tiny role of helping her build that confidence to make that decision, which in her case meant enrolling in real estate classes and stopping doing the digital marketing, so that she could make the space in order to make that career transition. So she needed to drop some fears, and make a decision by actually taking steps in that direction. And it has all worked out so, so well for her.
Well, here's the thing about dropping fear is, and I love this example, this story that you used as an example, is that by you doing the hypnotherapy and also having these talks, what it does is that when you can detach the fear from the actual thing that needs to be looked at, it does create space. That fear holds a huge amount of space in your energy. It's kind of like, is it it's random, it's ROM, right? Random operating memory, that it's always buzzing in the background. And this is how fear works. And so just by separating a little bit and creating that opening is all that needs to make that shift on over.
Do you
So
have a last story to share before we sign off?
I do. Thank you so much. Um, I love this story because this is a big historical familial story. So I
Okay.
had a client come up to me. We were, she was off and on my client for a couple of years. She had decided that it was time for her to get a divorce. There was a time in, she was at a time in her life where, it was two separate lives. Um, and what she didn't realize is that the divorce was becoming messy. And
It was
so,
becoming messy.
yeah, it was becoming messy. And so, to make things a little bit easier, she let him stay in one house. They owned two houses. So you would think it would be, very easy. One house, one house. And it was. But the house that she decided to keep was a rental. And the rental was a family member. It was rented out to a family member. And so he stayed in the house that was designated his, and she moved in with family. And she found herself stuck. And she was stuck because she was living with a family member and they had a dynamic since they were little. And she was in a place where she really wanted to change. And she also was renting to a to a family member where they already had decades old dynamic. And so what we needed to go through were, here are the changes that you're already making. Let's take the thread of these shifts and let's see how you are now. You're no longer the same person. If you're not the same person, the dynamic cannot stay the same. You actually have to stay the same in order for the dynamic to stay the same. And so we
Right.
really worked on reinforcing, here's how you're shifting, here's who you are, and now allow your family members to either shift with you or to move on, and the relationship changes in a different way. It took a whole lot of work on her part, not a whole lot of time, whole lot of work. And I was so impressed by the amount of inner work that she did, that within, I think it like, once she made the decision, I think it was a 2-month thing, that what the family member that she was living with, the dynamic changed. And then the family member that was living in the house gave her their notice that they were ready to buy a house. And so they were out within 30 days. It was really lovely. And she moved back into her house. The divorce was settled, right before that happened. And so she's incredibly happy where she is, having that freedom on so many levels.
It is amazing what can happen when you are ready to drop a fear and actually commit to a decision. And Cynthia and I are so excited to be bringing this new workshop to the world, starting in April 2025. I don't know how long it'll run, but it'll be very exciting to be putting this on. Details will be available on the classes page of my website. That's going to be on michellewalters.net/classes, and we may have some other links up as well for you to get to it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Reach out to the two of us. We are very reachable and friendly and full of information. So thanks everybody for listening to this week's episode of Mind Power Meets Mystic, and join us at our upcoming workshop.